Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I have my weekly wrap up with a little splash of vlog thrown in. Ooh, it's Saturday evening, not yesterday Saturday, but the Saturday before that as of the time that this video will go live. And I am starting this week's reading wrap up now because I finished a book today and I have a minute. So I'm going to record a clip when I have a minute. So this is Charlotte Bronte's High Life in Verdopolis. And this does not fit any reading challenges or reading prompts. I don't think I may be able to squeeze it into Antober somewhere. I'll look at the prompts and see if I can fit it into something. But it doesn't fit any of the prompts for any challenges or anything that I am doing. However, it is Victober adjacent because it is by Charlotte Bronte. And I say Victober adjacent because it doesn't fit any of the prompts, but it's Victorian. And also because it is one of the things that I wanted to read in my quest to read all of the Brontes collectively to zero. So I've read this, which I'm counting for reading the Brontes Juvenilia. I also want to read all of the poetry by the Bronte sisters. And then there is some poetry by Bram Bronte and by the father, Patrick Bronte, that I also want to read. So I am able to cross off one more thing off that list, which was one of my personal goals. And I'm very excited about that. Now, as to the book itself, High Life in Verdopolis. If you were unaware, the Bronte siblings, when they were teenagers, they amused themselves by writing stories and creating these worlds and peopling the worlds with people kind of like alter egos or heroes in real life that they admired, but that they kind of embellished their life story for them. And Charlotte and her brother ended up having their own, like splitting off from the other two sisters, Anne and, why can't I remember the other one? Anne Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, Wuthering Heights, Emily. Anne and Emily split off and did their own world. So this is one that Charlotte and Patrick did. Charlotte actually wrote it, but I mean, Bramwell contributed to the direction of the story. Like, I think Bramwell was largely in charge of determining what sort of things happened in the stories, and Charlotte wrote them down. And so it's very interesting, but can I tell you, it's like reading a soap opera. There are so many characters. So many of them are interrelated somehow. Two of the main characters are like on their third marriage, and their first two spouses died under what seems like mysterious circumstances. This is kind of like one soap opera episode in a long stream of a whole entire soap opera story, because Charlotte and Bramwell kind of in their imagination lived in these worlds and were constantly making up stories about these characters and things that they got into, and they developed like a whole world, a whole community of people, and their lives were all connected and their stories were all interconnected. And this is just one episode in that. So this is like watching an episode in a soap opera. And yes, it's that much drama / melodrama and kind of unbelievable, over the top characters. There is infidelity and adultery galore all over the place. And also definitely over the top behavior and all that kind of stuff. And most of the characters behave in very childish ways sometimes. And it's not surprising because Charlotte and Bramwell were quite young when they wrote this. So, well, I mean, they were teenagers, like maybe 17 or something like that, but still. Anyway, so it was interesting from the perspective of being Charlotte Bronte's Juvenilia. It was actually, aside from the fact that everything, how overdone everything was, and how, you know, soap opera-ish it was, like, it was well written. It was not technically, maybe, because like there were times when the perspective was sometimes like omniscient, and sometimes it was the perspective of one of the characters who I think was supposed to be like youngish, like teenager-ish, or maybe a little bit younger. And when I had a hard time getting a bead on how old he was based on the way he interacted with other people in the story and the things that he did. Sometimes he seemed like 10 to 12 years old, and sometimes he seemed like a young adult, like 18, 19, 20. He could have been older than that. I don't really know. But it wasn't clear from the narration. It was never spelled out. Now, I think if you had followed along in all the previous episodes of this epic soap opera, then you would know. But I didn't know coming into it. And that was never made clear in any of the notes or anything. So sometimes it was his perspective, but then other times it was like he was telling about things that by rights he should know nothing about because he wasn't there. And it was like mysterious secret things that nobody knew about. But he's revealing it to the reader. But how did he know? Like, it's kind of errors, like narrative errors like that. Kind of the overall overblownness of the whole story indicates, the immaturity, I guess, of the writers. But there still were just some really amazing passages all the way through where you could see Charlotte's burgeoning skill as a narrator, as a storyteller, as a story crafter, as a novel crafter. You can see her skills developing, and the way that she puts you into a situation or story, the way she describes things, just really well done for a 17-year-old. And honestly, comparing this to the book I read earlier this year, The Inheritance by Louisa May Alcott, which was written when Louisa May Alcott was 17 years old. That one may have been more tightly written. It had similar overblownness and melodrama-ness and soap opera-ishness to an extent, not to the extent that it wasn't here. Much more Puritan, I guess, in that sense, New England American. Yeah, it had similarities in that respect. But this one was honestly more imaginative, and I don't know, without comparing the two side by side and back to back, off the top of my head, I'm gonna say this one was maybe even a little better written. I don't know, but it would be interesting to compare them back to back. But all in all, it was very interesting. If you are interested in young adult literature that's somewhat fantastical and has a touch of soap opera in it, you might like it. But I think for most people, the appeal of it is in the origins of it. That Charlotte and her brother wrote these together when they were teenagers, and it was just a fun hobby for them long before either of them became published authors and before Charlotte's career actually started as an author. It was just a fun hobby for them. So it was interesting for that purpose. I think I gave it 3.5 stars in the end. But what's also interesting is I didn't realize how good of an artist Charlotte Bronte was. There are some paintings in here by her. This is one of her paintings that she did. And there's one I really like. And this is supposed to be the main character in the story. And I really love this drawing. It's like a pen and ink drawing. There's a little bit of a glare, but I don't know if you can see that. I really like that. That was, it's better than anything I could do for sure. So really kind of impressive her artist skills. That is Portrait of a Young Woman, circa 1833 to 1834, pencil and crayon drawing by Charlotte Bronte. So anyway, that was interesting. Another item checked from my Bronte list, and also from the Bronte related books that I had kind of put on personal TBR for October as being adjacent to what was going on for Victober. So yeah, that's my first read of the week, and hopefully I will get some more read and have another clip for you.
Hello, it is Tuesday evening or afternoon, I guess, and the house is quiet and I have a minute, so I'm going to film this video. But as soon as I'm done, I'm going to go snuggle up with a good book and read and maybe fall asleep because I'm not feeling well. I got sick over the weekend and spent most of the last 2 days in bed doing nothing but a little bit of reading, which was nice. Got a lot of reading done. And I went to work today, but now I'm smack worn out, so I did not do any of my evening activities, and yeah. But since the house is quiet and the light is good, that doesn't happen always at the same time, so I'm gonna film this real quick. I finished 2 books over the past couple of days. The first one is Honest Faith by Charles Spurgeon, which was a group read organized by Tiffany, and she hosted, together with Dia and Chrissy, some live chats. There's one more, well, by the time you watch this, the last one will have taken place. And I have enjoyed what I've been able to watch of the live chats and the discussions. Haven't been able to participate live because I have a ridiculously large family, and with all of those people, there's a ridiculous amount of birthdays, and 2 of the live discussions took place during family birthday parties. So I was not able to participate live really very much, but I did enjoy the discussions, and I did enjoy the book as well. I always enjoy reading Charles Spurgeon. He has a nice blend of humor and sensitivity in his writing. He can be really super snarky with some fantastic burns, but he also can be really expressive and understanding, and even occasionally gentle in his writings. And the book Honest Faith was very interesting. At first, it took me a little bit to track with him, like to follow where he was going. It's not organized in typical chapters. Each chapter is more like a little mini section with 4 to 5 paragraphs in it, and like focusing on a particular thought. And so almost like devotional, but not exactly, I guess. And maybe it was intended to be used as a devotional. I'm not sure. And it took me a little bit to understand the flow, and I could tell he was building on something, but I couldn't always tell what. Until I got to about 60 to 75% of the way of the book, through the book. And as I finished it up, I realized that he's basically walking through the journey of a person from the point where they are a complete skeptic and not really sure about, if there is a God to start with, all the way through to understanding all of the finer points of the story of God in the Bible and the story of the gospel, to the various facets of your Christian life and your Christian journey on earth, following up with the end of life and the journey. And along the way of all of those points of a person's journey, from skeptic to believer to passing on into the next life, he is tackling the doubts that naturally occur at those different phases of a life journey. And he's addressing them one by one, and he's using analogies. He's using a lot of scripture. There's so much scripture. Like, he would make a statement, and then immediately in the text there would be a scripture passage that is where his thought had come from. And he is, using common sense and illustrations to brush away the cobwebs of doubt that obscure the truth in every place of that journey, from skeptic to believer to an eternity in heaven. That's the overall structure. And he kind of, is just moving through that. And there's not like, okay, stop 1 on this journey, this is where we are. Stop 2, this is where we are. It's a little more fluid than that, but it's definitely working through that process and that passage, I guess. In particular, he had some really great analogies about proving the existence of God. And he used the example of your own body as an illustration. And I won't even try to recreate what he said here, because he said it much more eloquently and made more sense than I would be able to, especially since I only have half my brain working right now. But I really enjoyed his analogy. It was very interesting there. And then moving on, he was talking a lot about science and the doubts that might arise from having a scientific perspective on life, which I feel is really, really very timely to this day, obviously, because science has become something of a god and a religion in our modern culture. And many people place science and the truth of science as the highest level of possible known truth. And Charles Spurgeon kind of goes through why that's a faulty perspective. And it's very interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was a great read overall. So highly recommend Honest Faith by Charles Spurgeon. And then the other book I finished yesterday, I don't know if you saw the short that I shared earlier this week about my very wonderful book mail that I got. So let me give you a little backstory here. So when it comes to brain candy, One of the authors that I really enjoy is Emma St. Clair. She writes, I discovered her a couple of years ago, and she just writes really funny rom-coms. And they're always closed door, pretty clean. And so she's an author that I go to. I haven't loved everything that I've read by her. There's one definitely that I kind of DNF'd, that I just didn't care enough to keep reading. But several of them I have loved, and I really enjoyed this one. However, getting ahead of myself, telling you the story. Okay, so here's the story. I had seen last fall, everybody talking about the Sweater Weather series, which is a multi-author series of hockey romances that are all closed door, sweet, clean romances, however you want to describe it. And Emma St. Clair was one of the authors. Courtney Walsh wrote one. I think Jenny Proctor wrote one. There are a couple of others that I am not as familiar with. And I had seen this series last year when it came out, but I didn't have time to read any of them. Fast forward to this year, and I wanted to read at least one in the fall, for the mood, atmospheric sort of read. But then I ended up canceling my Kindle Unlimited at the beginning of September. And I didn't realize at the time that was my only access to these books. Like, my library didn't have them, but I really wanted to read one of them. So finally, I had some Pango books. So I looked on Pango, and sure enough, a couple of people were selling it. So I got Just Don't Fall by Emma St. Clair in that series. And it came yesterday, and it was just the perfect timing because I was homesick. By the time this came in the mail, it was dropped off on my front porch. I had read everything that I needed to read that day. Like, I'm doing buddy reads and stuff. I had read all of that, I was up to date on all of my reads. I was just going to read ahead in all of them. But then this came in the mail. And this was just the perfect thing to read when I was just sick and lying in bed. I'm not really wanting to concentrate too heavily on anything. And it was delightful. It was fun. So I really enjoyed Just Don't Fall by Emma St. Clair. I'm not really into hockey romance as a thing. Like, hockey's fine and everything. I don't really like those, like, subgenres, I guess, of romance, like, whatever, like millionaire and cowboy and all of those things. The only one that I really love is Regency rom-com. So anyway, but this was very good. I was reading it more for the fall vibes, which honestly, there aren't like huge fall vibes in here. A little bit. There's just like little hints and flavors of it. So it wasn't as fallish as I was thinking, but it was good and it was funny. Definitely some laugh out loud moments. There was a little bit of cheese. There were some scenes where I was like, okay, really? Okay. But most of the time I was just enjoying it, and it was a fun read and a fun ride, and now I put it back on Pango. So I generally don't hang on to books that are kind of like one-time reads for me. So I honestly don't have a great deal of like lighthearted fun literature on my shelves, because not that I don't read it, I just don't keep it, because I read it one time and then I'm never going to reread it again. So I pass it on. Anyway, so that's back on my Pango, and I really enjoyed it and just wanted to update with that. So I am probably going to finish Dracula this week at some point. So I will make another clip about that. That might be the only thing that I finished this week. We'll see. I have a couple of other things in progress. Dickens Land and the Thursday Murder Club. Moving along in both of those, but I don't know that I will finish them. And then I want to pick up two short things. One, A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle, and two, Lady Windermere's Fan by Oscar Wilde. And I don't think either of them will take me very long to read, but I don't know if I will pick them up before this week gets out or not. And then next week we have a few more days in October. And those, I think, are the only other things that I really had committed to reading in October. So that's good. When October started, I was reading The Doctor's Wife and Sylvia's Lovers. And those two books took me a really long time to read. And Honest Faith also. That didn't take long, but I was kind of reading on the schedule with the group read. So between those three, like the first 2 weeks of October went by, and that's all I had finished. So I was thinking, oh man, I'm not going to get to all of my goals in October. But actually, it is shaping up to be a really good reading month. Helped in part by the fact that I spent a couple days in bed with nothing to do but read. And that's about what I'm going to go do right now, actually. So, bye. Hello. It is, what day is this? Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. That's good. If you're a coffee purist, close your ears. Don't listen. You don't want to hear this, okay? So I made myself a pour over, but I made it with Trader Joe's has these seasonal coffees. And what I like about them is that they flavor them with the actual spices, like they grind up the actual spices together with the beans. And then this particular one, it's autumn maple coffee. And it's just like basic coffee and it's already ground. So it's not my usual fare, but I like that it is flavored with natural things. I just did it with a pour over. It's not like the pour over grind, whatever. It's still very good. Perfect for a fall evening with just a little hint of maple flavor. Love it. Speaking of Trader Joe's, our whole town is super excited because we got our very own Trader Joe's yesterday. They opened. And up until this point, we had to drive, I know, first world problems, 10 to 15 minutes down the road to the nearest Trader Joe's. But this one is right in town, very conveniently located in a shopping center that we go to pretty regularly anyway. So I went there today and it seemed like one of the larger Trader Joe's I've been in, and I was so excited. And definitely, this didn't excite me as much because we don't use these things at Trader Joe's very often, but they had literally 1.5 aisles of Trader Joe's, and they were long ones too. They were longer than normal of their freezer section. Normally, I don't see that much freezer stuff. They definitely had more things there than I had seen at other Trader Joe's that I go to. Like I said, we don't really do the ready-made foods much at Trader Joe's, but every now and then it's one of the fun things that our kids like to do is we go to Trader Joe's and we give them a budget and we say, you know, pick something for dinner tonight, whatever. And so that's usually when we use their freezer items. That's actually why I went not only to check it out, but to grab myself something for a quick dinner so then I can just go relax and continue to recover from my cold, which I'm on the upswing of things, so that's nice. And I'm also very grateful because it's like God knew that I was going to be sick and he basically cleared my schedule in the evenings this week. There were a couple of things that I canceled because I wasn't feeling well, but there were also several things that were just taken out of the way for me, so I didn't have to feel obligated to go or try to cancel them or anything. So that was actually a huge blessing, and so I'm glad that I'm starting to feel better and starting to feel more like myself. But the reason I'm making this video is because I finished Dracula. And I was a very bad girl and I could not stop reading it last night. And I may or may not have stayed up until 11:30 reading it, even though I wasn't like feeling super well. So that was a bad life choice, but I did it anyway. And it was really good. I don't really know what I was expecting. I guess in my mind, I had always thought of Frankenstein and Dracula as being like similar novels from, you know, the same century. Although Frankenstein was from earlier in the 19th century and Dracula was from later in the 19th century. And there's really nothing in common between the two. I'd have to think on it a bit to think if there's anything like actually in common. There's nothing really similar in their writing style or in the topic, other than that there's a monster featured in both of them. And yeah, I guess if anything, I was like equating it somehow mentally with Frankenstein out of Something Like Frankenstein. And also many people had told me that, or I had seen in videos and reviews of Dracula, whatever, not to expect like super creepy or super horrifying or anything like that. Like that, you know, it wasn't any of those things. It was pretty mild as far as that stuff goes. Okay, that might be true if you already are familiar. Well, I wouldn't say familiar with it. Everybody's familiar with like the concept of vampires or whatever. But if you haven't already read a lot of vampire literature or even horror, like I don't read much horror. I read very little thriller. I read some suspense, but that whole scary, creepy thing, I don't read a lot of it. So yeah, this was enough for me. It was definitely enough for me. It wasn't too much for me, but it was enough. It was scary enough. It was creepy enough. It was definitely creepy. It was squeamish enough for me. Like, it didn't quite cross that line, but it got really close a couple of times. The truth is, I can't handle a lot of like blood conversation. So I kind of skimmed those descriptions. Bram Stoker doesn't hold anything back. He's not vague in his descriptions. He's pretty particular. He's pretty graphic, may not be quite the right word, but he's not hiding anything and he's not being vague. So yeah, you know what's going on in every part of the story and you can imagine it pretty clearly. You can picture it in your mind's eye. There's no beating around the bush about anything that's going on in this book. He's pretty straightforward and blunt with it. But it wasn't too much for me. So I did enjoy it. It definitely pulls you in, very fast paced. I don't want to say too much because I feel like I may do like a deep thoughts video on this and just dig a little bit deeper. Not that I have anything fantastic or revelatory, if that's a word, to say about it. It was just a really good book that I wouldn't mind talking more about, but this weekly wrap up has already been too long because of all the stuff I've been reading. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed it. It kept me reading. It was pretty fast paced. I just really liked it. So enjoyed Dracula, finished that, and we will see what else I finish this week. If anything, this might be the end. So if it is, I will see you next time. Thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts about any of these books that I have read and or am working on for the rest of the week. And I will see you next time. Bye. But if it's not the end, then I will see you in my next clip.
Earlier this week, I mentioned that Trader Joe's opened in our town, and today it's a banner week, guys. It's a banner week here in Virginia. We have a Sprouts opening up, which I'm also very excited about. Formerly, the closest Sprouts to me, which is like an organic, like healthy food store. The closest one to me was way too far away to go on a regular basis. It does happen to be conveniently located next to the closest McKay to me. So I did go there when I went to McKay, but otherwise too far to go for groceries. But now there is a Sprouts in my town. So I am actually here on opening day because I have a conference to go to today. So I'm not working and the conference doesn't start till later. So I am going to go to Sprouts. I'm too late, I'm pretty sure, to be one of the first 100 to get like a free bag of goodies or whatever. But still, I want to check it out and see what's going on. So excited. I only spent $50. Quite proud of myself. They had a 20% off your entire purchase coupon, which is fantastic because I didn't actually need to go grocery shopping, but it's not every day you get 20% off your grocery bill. And so I found some things that were really good prices and then 20% off on top of that. So yeah. Now, Sprouts is more expensive even in the stuff that they carry compared to other grocery stores in many ways. But they do have good sales and they have things that you can't find everywhere easily. It will be so nice to have a store 5 minutes away where I can go grab some keto or low carb groceries that just aren't readily available at the stores I regularly shop at. And also things like certain types of vitamins, and we use a lot of homeopathics, and they'll have it all here. We don't have anything that close to us. So until today. So that is fantastic. Yay! And now I'm off all morning, so I am going to go. It's kind of turning into a vlog, but you know, I don't think you really care. Hopefully. Ha! Anyways, again, like I said before, I'm off this morning. So my husband and I are going to go out for breakfast and coffee and take a little hike before I have to go to my conference this afternoon. So snakes, poisonous plants, oh yeah, and ticks. Welcome to our park.
Hello, it's Saturday night and I'm going to finish up this wrap-up slash vlog with a quick clip. First of all, I finished my weekend with a conference, a Kodai Teachers Conference, and which you saw a little bit of clips of me there and some singing that we did. Lots of singing, so much fun. And I also read one more thing. I read Lady Windermere's Fan, and I don't want to say too much about it other than that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite Oscar Wilde, I don't think. I enjoyed The Importance of Being Earnest and An Ideal Husband a lot, both of those. And Lady Windermere's Fan was fine, and it was good. It was fun, and it had some great quotable quotes in it, some that I actually recognized as having heard before. So I enjoyed it from that respect, but I don't know, it just wasn't as compelling as the other two. It wasn't as funny as the other ones that I've read. So I don't know. I think I already put it on Goodreads. I think I gave it like 3 stars maybe. It was fine. It was fun. I wouldn't mind seeing it in person at some point, but that fills another prompt for Victober. And so, yeah, that was my week in reading and the fun things I got up to later on as the week went on. I hope you guys had a fabulous week and that your week coming up is even better. And I will see you next time. Bye.